Give me a second. While it's coming up, we are going to start just with our introduction to DevOps, okay? And then when we're doing our DevOps journey, we have to understand what is the right project. What is the right project for us to be able to select, right? There are new projects, there are projects that have been around our organizations or something like that for a long time, right? And so we need to figure out which project to choose, all right? So, why is my, I'm sorry, my machine is freezing. Give me a second, folks. I don't know why. Let me, Let me try to leave and come back real quick, folks. I apologize. My computer just froze on me. Did it work? Is it working now? Yes, okay, it's working now. All right, I don't have to leave. Cool. All right, so you're going to be talking about how to choose the right project, right? So there are new projects, there are which we call greenfield, there are brownfield projects that might be kind of old in the dust somewhere, like I say, in the attic, and your manager might say, hey, you know, can you revive this project, right? So we might have to figure out, okay, which is the best project for us to use. Thank you all for jumping in here as well. Then as far as building your team and what your team structure looks like, building a team, a good DevOps team takes a good strategy because everybody can't work in the way that you're working. Everybody's not good at communicating. Everybody's not good at being innovative, right? So you got to pick your team as well. We're going to talk about how to migrate to DevOps with just a slight bit. I'm going to give you some tips in like source control. You're probably already doing some source control, but you always kind of want to get an understanding of how that is. And then I'll talk about different systems, and you'll see some things here. And then at the very end, I'll actually give you a lab. I'll give you a link to some labs as well. All right. Now, let's go ahead and start the journey here. So what is DevOps, right? DevOps is, according to one of our colleagues, DevOps is a union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to end users. What you see here, you see this infinity symbol? And this infinity symbol contains all the steps to make a DevOps project work, okay? It is doing your planning. It is doing your building. It's doing continuous integration. Then we're deploying, right? Then we're running our operations. We're making sure that it's good. And then we're getting continuous feedback on that. And then the cycle starts over again. There is no end of a DevOps project, if you will, because at the very end, literally all you're doing is gathering the continuous feedback. And then once you're doing that, you're planning on how to implement it, and then you're building it again, okay? So you have organizations that deploy to production, all right, sometimes 5,000 and 10,000 times a week, okay? So this means that we have a project in our development environment, and say this project has a number of features that are out there, and we're building on these features one by one. We're not waiting until all the feature or the entire project is done and then sending it off to production and say, hey, everybody, I'm done with my project. No, what we're doing is we're taking bit by bit by bit by bit. And so that's why they're deploying every single day. Some people deploy 10, 15, 20 times a day because they're making a code change here and they're deploying to production. They're making a code change there and they're deploying to production, all right? How many of you have been studying about how DevOps and the DevOps framework works? Raise your hand or give me a thumbs up or something like that. Okay, Nasha? Nicholas, I know you have, because I remember seeing, we talked about this last year as well. All right, so DevOps actually talks about replacing siloed development and operations teams. Whenever you go into an organization, not as much these days, but but a lot of organizations you might go into, you have your dev team, right? Or your engineers, they're working consistently. Your software developers, they're working consistently trying to get this software up and running. Then you have an operations team. Operations team is basically building the server, building the infrastructure as well. So what we're doing is we're taking that and we're bringing them together. So now you'll have software engineers that know and understand framework and operations and infrastructure. And then you have infrastructure folks that know and operate and understand development. Okay. So that's kind of like the cross between the two. Hey, Jamar, yeah, this is the first meeting. So we're just slowly lifting off of the ground here. All right. One of the things that I noticed about it getting exposure to DevOps is that there's a strong connection to something called lean management approaches, and how many of the DevOps principles and practices started with lean. Okay. It used to be that separate teams wrote the code and tested the code and deployed the code and maintained the code during a product's lifecycle, right? But then the idea behind DevOps is to break down all of those barriers and get everyone collaborating from the get-go. So really what DevOps is about collaboration. If you do not have collaboration, you do not operate in DevOps. That is a foundational tool, is being able to collaborate, right? DevOps is about improving culture. It's about setting up automation where it makes sense, right? Not doing these menial tasks over and over again, but set up something that can be automated, right? Again, I talked about like your lean principles as well, and figuring out ways to measure your efforts and sharing ideas and solving problems and all of that. So for developers, you're working in a production-like environment on a daily basis. So you're running code in a daily basis. You're not like on the same day that you wrote the code, you're running that code and you're dropping it in production. You're not waiting a year or 6 months. Years ago, people would build up this code and they would try to deploy everything at one time in a production environment, and there were so many failures. So you have a project that would be out there that would be quote unquote complete, but then you'll take 6 months or a year to be able to get it up and running like it should, when DevOps takes that and it chops it up in little pieces, okay? So on the operations side, it's also not about like operating with tickets and all of those different types of things, all right? So here's understanding a little bit about what DevOps is anyway. When I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was a movie called Top Gun. Top Gun 2 just recently came out, right? And I actually am studying to be a pilot and all these different things. But the funniest thing about, or the thing about DevOps and how that is related to fighter jets and all of that is the process that goes into combat operations, right? There's something called an OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act, okay? This OODA loop that we see here, this is saying that there's a life cycle in how our projects are done, okay? So the OODA loop kind of comes from this guy named John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot back in the 1940s in the US, right? And so he was one of the best fighter pilots ever, because based off of his simulations and all of that, he was able to beat people in competing countries and all these different things. If you've ever seen a plane dogfight before, they basically try to shoot each other out of the sky. Well, they were doing simulations based off it, and he would always win within less than a minute. And the reason why he was able to do that is because of this OODA loop, right? He was able to observe, he was able to orient where he was, decide what he was going to do, act on it in a single minute, okay? So this is how DevOps works. You're observing what's going on out there, all right? And based off of what's going on there with your project, you need to make some tweaks within your code and all these different things. You need to decide what you're going to do, and then you need to deploy it into production, okay? So if you look at the screen here, this is about the more you deploy, right? The more you're learning, okay? And then you're going to get a lot of improvement. So here's kind of like how this loop works. This loop begins, right? And all of the good code you're going to keep. and you're going to push that to production. All of the indifferent code, you might make some changes there, pushing it to production. All of the bad code, you're kicking it out. Okay, so what happens is you might start off and your project might be barely getting along, might be a little sketchy or something like that. But the more that you continue to deploy, the better your project is actually going to become. All right. So there's some things that you're able to do. Things like you're becoming data informed. You're letting data inform your decision. You're seeing why things are failing. Right. You're letting data inform your decision. You're learning where things are failing. You're learning where things are not working. And then you're shortening your cycle. Something that might take a longer time to run and get into production is not taking as long anymore. It's because you're continuously improving. All right. Something like this seems like it's common sense, but it took a long time for the software development side of things to kind of get up. All right. Now, here's some bits and pieces about DevOps, and then I'm going to stop and ask questions. All right. The DevOps journey is made up of several components. You can't learn it all at once. This is why we're taking weeks. And in these weeks, as I'm giving you this foundation, in the next coming weeks, we're going to talk about tools and how these tools point back to what I've been sharing with you. All right. Continuous integration, right? Continuous integration that we see here at the top. You're merging your code. You're testing the code. You're finding your defects early. Okay. Continuous delivery. This is continuing to deliver that software into testing environments and then being able to quickly fix bugs. Okay. You're utilizing that. You're also utilizing version control. There's no way you can be doing DevOps without version control. You have to do version control because, and this is probably with the Git-based repository, because this is how you all can work together with teams all across the world, right? You can be able to work with others by using version control without overstepping someone else, okay? So version control is key, okay? Making sure it's agile, making sure it's lean, making sure that we're getting our work into sprints, right? To manage our team capacity as well. All right, and so how do we do that? We do that by using things like Kanban boards, as you see here at the bottom right-hand side, right? Where we're talking about our to-dos, what's in progress, what's ready to code, and all of those things, all right? Excuse me. Then monitoring. We got to be able to monitor our applications. We got to see how they're doing. We got to be able to catch the rich data in these logs. If we're not tracking how we're doing, how are we ever going to be able to improve it? We can't, right? Another thing that's needed is the cloud. We need to be able to access this information in the cloud. Utilizing the cloud is extremely important because the cloud can help overcome things like bottlenecks with our projects, right? Because we have the ever expanding, the scaling in or the scaling out of our virtual servers and things of that nature. So, or our virtual machines. So we'll be able to carry the capacity of what's needed in our applications. So we're going to talk about that as well. Infrastructure as code is something that's good because infrastructure as code enables automation and validation and basically the creation and tear down of environments. Okay, if you write an infrastructure as code file, it lists out several steps that can actually be done to create an environment. Okay, this will replace ordering servers. You may join an organization where you might have to order a server. You might need to be able to get the specs off a server and all these different things. If you join an DevOps or a cloud-based organization, you can use infrastructure as code to build up these environments in minutes, right? And then if it breaks, you can tear it down and rebuild it again. Microservices is another piece that we'll actually go into as well, but microservices is basically isolating your business use cases into basically reusable services that can communicate via interface contracts and all of that. So it enables scalability and efficiency as well. All right. Now, lastly, before I ask any questions, DevOps, you see this guy struggling, right? He's struggling with these weights. If you've ever been in the gym before, you know that lifting weights, it hurts at first. It's something new. is something different, right? A heavier weight is something different. And doing that over and over and over again, it hurts. But what ends up happening is it gets easier along the way. You're able to lift it at first, right? So what ends up happening is you run into all kinds of issues when you're moving to DevOps. Nothing's working. You're like, man, this is crap. This is phony. I just don't know, and all these different things. But you just got to keep working at it, right? The more you exercise these new techniques, the easier it's going to become. The more you're communicating with your team member, you're sitting down, you're trying to figure out this stuff, the easier it's going to become. All right. So it's very key that as we talk about this DevOps journey, and when we get into these tools and we get into these demos and you get into your labs, you know the reason behind it. Because it's not just going to be you doing this work on this pipeline, it will be you and a myriad of just a lot of other team members that's working in this pipeline or working in multiple pipelines as well. So you got to know what's going on and where everything is going on. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to add, Androsky, you just raised your hand right there. I'm going to ask you, Androsky, you can go first.
Yeah. Hey, first and foremost, Robert, thank you so much, man. This is amazing content. I sort of just wanted to bring it home here, right? Um, that what Robert is teaching here isn't a far out concept that you'll never use. When you leave university and you go into the real, how you build software will be exactly like this. It is imperative that you understand how and start incorporating these best practices within your teams so that when you get into the workforce, you can hit the ground running and actually be thought leaders in this space. So you don't understand something Robert is saying, if you need clarity, raise your hand, interrupt him, because it's better you do that here than do it on the job, right? It's better for you to actually interrupt us, and we can slow down, ensure you understand it, and move forward. On the job, you do not want to be doing that. So take full advantage of this. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Androsky. Nicholas, what's up?
Yeah, am I being heard?
Yeah, you're kind of low, but I think I can make it out.
Wait, let me change. Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah.
Better. Okay. It's not it's not necessarily regarding the course, but on Just Kids, so there are a few persons from the Department of Computing who are not enrolled in the listing for the workshop, so they don't have the content. I'm trying to get the information, their email addresses, and then I'll send it to you via I'll maybe give you access to the doc so that they could add the emails so that they can be in the loop for the following sessions.
Absolutely. Please send those over to me as soon as possible. Okay. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nicholas. Ajay.
Yes, good afternoon. Sorry, bit of the same topic as Nicholas said. Mr. Spicer, I also have members of my faculty at here at NCU who are not seeing the emails as well. I did send out a poll and I asked those who were interested to contact me. I gathered the email addresses and I emailed them to you sometime last week or earlier this week, I believe. So you could check and kindly add those emails to the mailing list. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tanjay. I received your email, and I've already forwarded all invites in this series to the folks that you sent over. So they should now have all invites for all sessions.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
All right. All right. So for my question regarding the topic, to you, Mr. McNair,
Hmm.
um, I remember you mentioned that the DevOps architecture was a bit like, well, sometimes it uses like a Git repository,
Hmm.
and being in uni, having group work, I imagine it would be something like the workplace would be like a team-based effort to complete a specific task, and we would use Git and GitHub to like share the work and to kind of mirror the DevOps process.
Hmm.
But how does, with so many pushes to production, how does DevOps properly handle like merge conflicts or multiple people working on the same thing at the same time where there's a bit of a mismatch in continuity? I know that there would you in Git will you utilize different branches, but man, I can't imagine managing hundreds or even thousands of branches would be easy. Or how does DevOps go around this issue?
Well, one of the things you have to do is before you push to production, you always got to pull. You always got to pull in what new updates are out there. That's one thing that you have to do, right? Because if you push something out there, then of course you will be overlapping others as well. So that's one of the main things you do. And now, when we go through an actual pipeline structure and our branching, I'll kind of explain to you all of the differences and how we're able to merge and all of that. But that is a great question. But I think first and foremost is whenever you're getting ready to push over into production, you got to make sure that you pull down the updated code of whatever that may be, so you don't overstep anyone. And I was also talking about versioning as well, right? Where's that slide? Um, yeah, version control, which you're using Git as it is, right? So just your version control is going to help with that as well, because you'll be able to see the version that you're deploying and all of that. But we're going to get into that because you see this up here. This is kind of like how we have our main branch there, and then we're able to have our different branches for our features and all of that. And I'll go through that, and we'll also do some tooling as well to see how you can do it without overlapping others. Thank you very much. That was a great question. Any other questions?
So I just want to add a little bit onto that. So there are different tools um, that you can actually use. And if let's say I'm doing a simple project, right? The project would have a main or a master branch. It would have a dev branch, but from dev would actually be a set of feature branches, and they would all, let's say, I'm creating 3 features, and I've issued a feature out to each member of my team. So I have 3 members of my team. Each of them are working on a specific feature. They would create a feature branch by leveraging the Git feature configuration. And once they're finished with that feature branch, they would merge that into dev, right? What Robert is basically saying is that as an individual developer, you have to always ensure that when you're going to work on your branch, that one of the first things you do is a git pull, right? And you can actually be more specific, git pull dev, right? Such that your feature branch is always up to date. And every time you actually do a merge on that feature branch, you can configure your environment such that you're always merging into dev. So dev is always up to date. Dev isn't the place where you're actively developing, but that's the place where you merge your feature branch, run your tests. Once tests are accepted, you then merge dev into the main branch. So ideally, the dev branch becomes the place where all development changes and new features sit. And once those are tested, you're going to do a pull on your feature branch to ensure that you're up to date. Does that add a little bit more clarity?
I think he might have fell. Oh no, there he is.
Yeah, I understand. I'm understanding now.
Yeah. So in an environment where you have hundreds of people working on the same thing, just like you protect the main branch, you also protect the dev branch, and you can actually set up if you're working within GitHub on both main and dev, you can set up GitHub actions to automatically deploy the dev change merges into the dev environment so you can actually test it. So the place where you actually test locally would actually be your feature branch, and dev would have its own infrastructure within the cloud on which you deploy new changes to the dev branch. And once you test those changes within the dev environment and everything runs and works perfectly fine within the cloud, then you would actually do a PR for main, and that PR would actually be checked by someone. So before it even gets to be merged, someone would actually go through, check the diffs, right, to ensure best practices are being followed, and then they would actually merge those changes into production. So it's a series of steps and a series of activities that gets you to that place of always ensuring that production is protected and has the best code. Does it make sense, guys?
You understand? I see how
Yes,
it's
Andrewski, hold on.
compartmentalized in a sense, and then um, how it's managed from there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
all your feature branches would come off of dev, and there's only going to be one straight line between dev and main, but you're going to have a CI/CD pipeline that deploys dev changes into the dev infrastructure, and once those are accepted, right? So you go from merging a feature into dev, that feature gets accepted it's reviewed and accepted into the dev branch. Then once it's merged into dev, there's a deployment that happens at a dev level, and then that deployment happens on the cloud infrastructure. The changes are checked, and you ensure everything is working properly. Then once everything is working and you check the boxes, you then merge dev into main, where you can be confident. Once it's merged into main, that feature branch that was first merged into dev disappears. It's deleted automatically. So you don't have feature branch sprawl. You can configure your environment such that once a feature branch gets merged into dev, that feature branch dies. So you don't have hundreds or thousands of feature branches. Make sense? I see your hand, Nasha.
Hi, really, really quick one on that note, because right now, I'm working on a project where I'm doing something similar, like I'm setting up a deployment pipeline. So this particular class is already very helpful, and I'm sure will continue to be helpful. Quick question. So because most of our team members are younger or newer to development, we have we have dev, staging, and production, but we also introduced a level between dev and staging. So that staging is kind of a cleaner copy of production almost. And then that stage in between dev and staging is called integration. And it's so that the newer devs can ensure that the feature branches that their sure works on their side, ensure that it works generally. I was wondering if you had any other approaches to the solution that, so let's say even if things are arranged and documented correctly, you still want to have several foolproof, I guess, stops so that devs don't accidentally make a mistake. Do you have any other solutions to that other than introducing an additional branch?
No, so the solution to that is going to be a human in the loop, right?
Mm,
Human in the loop is going to be the one that really because what you're doing here, you're trying to solve and dev, stage, and prod, totally fine, right? Stage is going to do what it's going to be the integration where it integrates into the cloud environment, and it's totally fine to have that. But
mm,
you need to have human reviewers and good PR reviewers. Not somebody who's just
mhm,
going to go through willy-nilly, but somebody who's responsible and is going to take the time to go through, flag things that need to be flagged, recommend changes. So a more senior person. That's
Right.
trustworthy. That's
Okay.
sort of what you. I don't know if Robert, if you have more to add there.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a bit of automation that you can do as well. Like when you're getting ready to deploy to each one of the stages, there are entry triggers and exit triggers that the system for Azure DevOps will be able to check to make sure those are good before moving them on to the next stage. So outside of what Androsky was saying, and definitely having someone check, there's also other checks. Maybe there might even be some linters or something like that that can run through the code as well. There are several, and we'll go into it again when we get into the Azure DevOps tool. I'll highlight those different areas to make sure that before it moves on to a different environment, that it kind of passes those tests before moving on.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, because I looked it up and saw some stuff about linters as well. So I really look forward to learning more about that. And otherwise, Androsky, I will take your suggestion and see if I can find a more senior person, like not me, not one of us newer people to the team, someone who could do that review. That would be great. Thank you guys, both of you.
Yeah. You're a student as well, so you should have access to GitHub Copilot. And you can actually tag GitHub Copilot as a PR reviewer, and that's going to be unbiased and very thorough. So you will want to actually leverage that as well. So that might be your first step, because it won't be biased, right? And it's going to be very thorough. It's designed to actually be thorough. So you probably, if you can't, you can automate that by getting the GitHub agent to review the code and flag issues and bugs.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll look into
Yeah,
that
so
as well. Thank you, Androsky.
absolutely. So for everyone on this line, you are a student. You should be able to actually go into GitHub and activate GitHub Copilot for students. There are a ton of videos on YouTube that shows you how to do that. And there are a ton of resources specifically for students that GitHub actually exposes for computer science students. So a next step after this session ends is to activate your free GitHub Copilot um, uh, 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 service. Cool.
Yep, makes sense.
There should be a lot more excitement. That's a big deal, guys. Um,
You know, I gave my like shocked emoji face as I was like, "Oh wow," because I didn't know that that was something that I could do.
yeah, Carlin already has it. So Carlin, you're the go-to person if anybody has any
What's going
issues.
on? Joke.
All right, I'm back. Can everybody hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, Robert.
Oh, okay. Good. So what part did I was talking, but what part did you all hear where I was talking about the different checks and triggers that you can go through before moving on to the different environment?
I don't think any. Just
Okay.
now you're talking about.
Okay. So basically, what Androsky was saying, you'll have someone looking over the code, right, which is extremely important. But also as you begin to do your deployments either before entering a stage or exiting another stage, there are different checks that you'll be able to do, which we'll see in the DevOps tool that'll be able to help you be sure and be confident that the code that you're deploying is actually going to work in the next environment. But we will get to that as well.
Yeah, Robert, I was also telling them that they can leverage the new GitHub Copilot agent that reviews PRs. Um, that's pretty fantastic and unbiased.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. All right. All right, cool. We got only a few minutes left in here, but I did want to share with you a couple of resources that you're going to need in your DevOps journey. This one right here that you see is DevOps Handbook, right? This was created back in 2016. And this isn't anything that you read straight through. This is something that you will read and kind of go through where you need understanding on different concepts of how DevOps started and the important pieces of DevOps. So definitely grab that, jump on Amazon, grab a digital version or grab a physical version, and just make sure you have that in your arsenal because this is going to help you with your concepts, and this is going to help you again when you're in the midst of things and you're trying to learn and you're trying to grow and you're sitting in a lot of these meetings. A lot of things are going to go over your head, so it's good that when you're taking notes to have something to refer back to when you hear different terminology and you're trying to figure out how it works within your organization. Having a resource like this, the DevOps Handbook, is going to be great for you. So just be aware of that. All right. Next, um, kind of back to what we were talking about is this is a quote this guy named Gary Groovy come up with, and he's just saying that understanding how to work together is the most important part of DevOps. Okay. That's where you have to deliver value. That's where you're going to gather your value as well. All right. So there are different things that you need to do. You need to be able to identify different teams. When you're walking into an organization, you need to be able to say, okay, I'm on a team, right? And I need to build another team. I need to transform one of these teams, right? So this is what I've been a part of. I've been a part of organizations where they didn't have a DevOps team whatsoever. So we need to build a staff. We need to build a team that's going to be able to work on this project, right? And so we need to see, okay, who's available. And then we even need to see what are the different procedures, what are the different processes, right, that you're doing now that needs to stop. 9 times out of 10, you get into an organization, there is going to be procedures and processes that need to stop. And the excuse you're going to get is, well, we've always done it this way. And you're going to need to be able to say, I understand this may always be this way, but because we're coming into a different culture, different transformation, this is extremely important for us to change things and do things new. Okay, so this means a lot of folks need to relinquish control. A lot of folks need to kind of jump on board and say, okay, this is what it's all about, because DevOps is all about culture. DevOps, and I have to say that over and over again because a lot of times people don't understand. They think it's tools, they think it's pipelines, they think it's these things, environment stuff like that. But if not everybody is on the right team, which you might be learning now in some of your classes, if not everybody is moving forward and talking and communicating on what they're doing, you're going to have challenges and it's not going to work, right? So you got to be able to work on a team that's focused on your transformation, work on a team, work with people that are well respected in what they know in their subject areas. You don't have to know it all, right? Somebody else might know a lot, you know a lot, and you all work together to get the job done. All right. Um, and so that's kind of what you'll need to do. I want to give you another resource as well. This one is actually it's called a Phoenix Project, and this is actually a book, and it just reads about different uh, different places in an organization, different roles in an organization, and this company is actually going through the DevOps journey. So if you've never thought about how DevOps actually started and where how we got to where we are, this is a good resource for you. So that's another one you should pin in. All right. Couple other things here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. And then for next week, we're going to kind of get into a little bit more as far as like our pipelines and things of that nature. Um, with the DevOps team as well, when we're measuring, remember at the very beginning, I said we need to measure. We need to get that constant feedback, right? So we need to be able to measure our outcomes. What are we doing in these outcomes, right? What are these looking like? We need to be able to reduce the time that we're spending on fixing bugs. Because when you get into an organization, and this organization is spending a lot of time fixing bugs, you will do no innovation whatsoever, right? So You need to be able to define those measurable incomes of what you're looking for. And Carolyn, the book is called The Phoenix Project. The Phoenix Project. Androsky, have you read The Phoenix Project?
That's one of the first books I bought for my
I figured.
Audible library.
I
It's a
figured.
very, yep, yep. Guys, so the Phoenix Project is well written, and it's written in a way that all tech people can relate to it. It's a really good book.
Yeah.
I recommend it as well.
You can see yourself in it a lot. Just what where you kind of lean towards in IT and stuff like that. You can kind of see yourself in it a lot, and you can learn from the mistakes that they made in there as well. But again, to get back on this one, again, your goals, you need to be able to reduce unplanned work, right? You need to be able to reduce that time as well. Um, Another thing that folks hate in this space is the work that people do outside of their working time. Okay, so there's a lot of situations that I've been a part of where people have been trying to deploy to production on a Friday, and then Saturday morning at 2 a.m., I get a page talking about something has crashed and I got to work on the weekend. Nicholas, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're showing something other than the handbook, but that is what we're seeing.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Nobody sees my screen? Anybody else see it? You see it now?
I'm
Yeah,
seeing it.
seeing
I
it.
was seeing it before. Yeah.
Oh, or you were? Okay. If you weren't seeing it, let me go back real quick. This is the Phoenix project that I was referring to as well. So just making sure that you got that. Um, Again, we're talking about measurable goals as well, right? So what are these measurable goals? Uh, they need to have timelines, right? We can't set long-term goals. No, we can't do that. We have to have short-term goals, and because if you set long-term goals, it's harder to reach because you don't have all of the details, and it's easy to put off work when you know it's not needed for a while. Procrastinators love to set long-term goals because they say, I'll get to it when I get to it. You can't do that in DevOps, right? You have to have measurable goals and measurable timelines as well. All right. So when we're talking about these projects that we might be working on, we're talking about things that span anywhere from a few months, um, um, maybe even to a year, right? But it's more important to have 2 week goals and 4 week goals, all right? And kind of getting to step by step, piece by piece, what I was talking about earlier, getting to piece by piece and learning and building in our project. It's really a challenge when we have a lot of these long-term goals, and I'm just kind of speaking from experience as well. Um, all right. Any questions? I'm going to cover one more piece because I think this is kind of important as well. All right, we good? All right, so let me talk about the two different types of projects that you should be able to focus on. Greenfield project, brand new project. This might be something that you all are working on now at school, right? Brand new project, out of the box. This is one where you kind of have your own. It's like it comes from a term of undeveloped land, right? So you have undeveloped land. You can build whatever you want on that undeveloped land, okay? So this can be a usage of tools. This could be uses of other products, right? This is using the code that you like to utilize the best, right? All of these different things you can use with a greenfield project. Brownfield project is a little bit difficult because a brownfield project, you're gonna have to review the code of how it's written. You're gonna have to do a lot of QA, right? Hosting a lot of different code reviews, trying to figure out, okay, where were folks going on these projects? Now, you might say, I always want to go with a greenfield project, but when you get into these live situations, that's not always possible. You got budget constraints and you got all these different things that you have to work with that you might have a manager or a team that say, hey, we need to work on an older project and get this up and running. But so both of them are beneficial. One is beneficial because, again, the greenfield, you can start from the ground up, right, and be able to get things working. The brownfield is not necessarily. The brownfield is going to be getting in, finding that old code, finding different checkpoints, trying to introduce new code, right? Trying to figure out what the technical debt is, and we'll talk about technical debt and all of that. But I definitely wanted to make sure that you all understood that when you get into these DevOps scenarios, there are different types of projects that you're going to be working on, and not everything is starting from the ground up. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Um, I wanted to cover, I've got a lot more to cover, but I definitely don't have enough time. I might have to get into get into some of this next week. But when we're talking about our DevOps tools, what tools are you using for DevOps right now? Are you all using GitHub, or are you using Azure DevOps, or maybe some other tool?
I use GitLab, and I use Smarter ASP for hosting instead of Azure.
Okay. Okay. No problem with that at all. And I see Carlin put GitHub in there as well. I'm just going to cover the two that we generally discuss here at Microsoft. Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps has a number of components to it, right? You have Azure Boards, which is our agile planning. If you use anything like Trello or any type of Kanban board associated with it, this is how you will work. I know GitHub has a Kanban board feature as well, um, and utilizing Azure pipelines. So when we go through our demos, we're gonna talk about Azure pipelines. It seems like you all have been utilizing pipelines in your projects as well. Azure repos is your code repositories. Artifacts, right, are what you're going to be able to use for your different for your package management, for supporting things like Maven, NPM, Python, and NuGet package feeds as well. And then we don't really talk about Azure test plans, but I think they're actually going to do away with Azure test plans. But those are your testing solutions as well. One of the things that's extremely important with DevOps is testing, right? Again, there's no point in being a part of an environment if you're not testing what you're doing and you're not trying to increase upon to make things better, right? And then, of course, we talked a little bit about GitHub, and some of you are utilizing that. So you have GitHub code spaces, you have your repos, where you're familiar with repos and those repositories as well. From what you all were saying earlier, creating our automation workflows, um, and packages, just like I was saying before, our NPM packages, our Maven packages, and then doing your security review, right, for reviewing code and identifying your vulnerabilities, and then kind of to what Androsky was saying earlier, utilizing something like GitHub Copilot as well to be able to help you along the way when it comes to your pull requests and writing better code and things of that nature. I'm going to stop here because I don't want to kind of open up anything else. And we'll kind of get into the tooling and the details of the tooling here next week. Before we close out, Androsky, did you have any final words before we dismiss? Or any questions, by the way?
Uh, no final words. I mean, for me, I have a question. Is this resonating with everybody?
Yes, I'd say so.
Perfect. Can I say a show of hands where this is this is resonating, but you have questions.
Where
So wait,
can I get the slide?
I'll
where
create
can it?
some for you. I can't give you these, but I'll create something different for you to be able to get to you because these are actually Microsoft training material. So I can't give you these, but I'll create some for you, Jamari.
I
Okay,
will
thanks.
also publish this on YouTube, so you guys can come back to this video and rewatch it.
And it's good. I'm glad this is resonating with you all. Again, at the onset, I wanted to make sure you understood the concept before we get into all this stuff. You got to be able to know the concept. You got to understand why why DevOps is important because of the organizations that I've been a part of. I've been in transformation to DevOps. I've been in companies that said we did DevOps and we don't do it anymore. I've seen some that kind of do half DevOps stuff, and it's all over the place. But what I've noticed is that when you have an organization that understands how DevOps works fundamentally, as far as the communication, as far as having having everybody not work in silos but on teams is great. So I just want you all to be able to hear it from the aspect of somebody that's worked in these environments before. Nicholas, you had a question?
Not a question, but I would say maybe like a pointer. So I'm not sure. Some of you might have joined late, but so when I met Robert last year, and got an introduction to what DevOps is and how it can aid in software development, I was very intrigued. And something that I would want to is like a rule of thumb
Thank you.
as a person who is learning DevOps. It it's it's important to go through the basics, as you said, and for Andrasky and Robert, what I would kind of give you guys as a pointer as well is that most of us are the students in university, unless they have been enrolled in an internship or have been working, they won't have a grasp of the details of it. And in my workflow, I actually went on the Microsoft Learn page to get an introduction into what the DevOps is, the different phases of it. But when I actually started doing it, I had to start very small. So, you mentioned your source control, Git, and then work my way up to containers, which Andrusky did a very good job on at the Microsoft. They say if you guys don't have an understanding of that, I think it'd be very good to follow through with this so that you can get an understanding of how all of the technologies come together and work.
Thank you, Nicholas. Sean, were you about to say something? No? Okay. Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. It's yeah, it is about gathering these concepts, right? I've taught this class for a year and a half, or maybe close to I think it was actually closer to 3 years. And when I tell you the things that I'm giving you right now are things that even people that are working in these large companies have no clue, have no concept about, and learning the basics and understand. Like it's okay to go back to recordings, right? Good thing that this is being recorded. It's okay to go back to recordings. Okay to pull up Microsoft Learn and try to get these concepts. It's okay to go to YouTube and try to get other things, because until you're actually in it, it's going to be really hard for you to grasp it. Now, once you get in it, you get into an organization, you'll be able to find your footing, and you'll be able to look at a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I remember when Rob was saying this. I remember when Rob was saying that. So I'm trying not to make it really far-fetched. I'm trying to bring it for you, to you, for a level for you to really be able to see like how things are working in an organization. And it's not for you to become discouraged one at all. It's not for you to become discouraged. It's for you to understand that there are a lot of concepts around this, a lot of foundational things that's going to take a lot of reading. Heck, it took me a lot of reading to do. So it took me a lot of reading. It took me a lot of seeing things crash and seeing things kind of not come together. But then at the end, it all started to make sense for me. So thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that, Nicholas. Any other questions, any comments, or anything like that? And we'll be back next week to kind of go up a little bit higher on this DevOps journey. No, we good? All right. Well,